Welcome to Trade Connect of ICC UAE. And in this Trade Connect broadcast, we will be dealing with a very important subject. We'll be dealing with COVID-19 in terms of trade finance, but in particular, we will be focusing on the guidance paper of the ICC Banking Commission on the impact of COVID-19 on trade finance transactions issued subject to ICC rules. Guidance paper recently launched. I will take you through the paper so you can absorb, assimilate, and use in your day-to-day international trade and finance business. The guidance paper commences with a disclaimer. And in the disclaimer, the ICC endorses no responsibility in this guidance paper, which is aimed only at sharing practical views and guidance from experts for practitioners. And you will find this paper is full of practical advice and guidance from practitioners. The paper moves on then with section 1, which is the executive summary. It elaborates that the question of whether or not force majeure could be applied by banks as a defense to non-performance had not been considered up until recently. Interesting question. Whether or not force majeure could be applied by banks as a defense to non-performance. Very interesting. The guidance paper then moves on to the joint statement between the World Health Organization, WHO, and ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, where it highlights that it is an immediate priority, that businesses should be developing and implementing business continuity plans. So business continuity plans in the current situation, mission critical. The paper also highlights that the current situation is quite similar to that experienced in 2010 when we had the volcanic eruption, volcanic ash. Planes could not fly. Documents could not be delivered between banks. But of course now in the current pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, force majeure has come center stage. Force majeure. Section 3 of this document, the force majeure. The force majeure component is taken from the ICC force majeure clause crafted by the ICC. Force majeure clause. Force majeure event. An event that prevents or impedes a party from performing one or more of its contractual obligations. A, B, C. A, where the impediment is beyond its reasonable control. B, that it could not have been reasonably foreseen. And C, that the effects of the impediment could not reasonably have been avoided. The paper highlights correctly that depending on the applicable law in various jurisdictions, they may have different requirements and different treatment. And of course, this could result in different results for the parties involved. Section 3 force majeure continues to elaborate that each of the ICC rules contains an article on the concept of force majeure. Well now, to be clear, under the articles referenced here, UCP, URDG, URC, URR, EUCP, URBPO, all of these articles, as drafted, refer to the interruption of a bank's business. Interruption, interrupt, interruption, 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 interruption of the bank's business. Now, interruption is usually manifested by actual closure of a bank, though not exclusively so. But let's focus on closure of a bank that may be as a result of a force majeure event. So interruption of a bank's business, which means that the beneficiary may not be in a position to actually make a presentation, for example, to a bank before a guarantee or a letter of credit expires. Interestingly, in this list, you do not see reference to ISP 98, International Standby Practices. ISP 98 for standby letters of credit. ISP 98 does not use the words force majeure at all, but focuses on the practical issue of closure of a bank on a banking or business day on which such bank would normally be open. This is a very, very practical approach and avoids bankers having to determine is an event force majeure or not. Okay, moving forward with the guidance paper. The guidance paper in section 4 deals with the important issue of the possibility of modification of ICC rules. As you are aware, when ICC rules apply to a trade finance instrument, for example, letter of credit, UCP latest version, Just by using that phrase, all of the 39 articles of UCP apply to the letter of credit. Similar for URDG, etc. But this section highlights that it is possible to modify or exclude the rules to suit the circumstances of the parties involved in the trade transaction. For example, UCP 600 Article 1 states, "The rules are binding on all parties thereto unless expressly modified or excluded in the credit." So you may modify, you may exclude, but the guidance paper also highlights you need to take care. It's strongly recommended that careful attention is paid and professional advice is sought, and indeed this is good guidance in Section 4. In Section 5 of the document, it proposes and provides possible alternative solutions that involve the use of electronic documents, scanned, faxed, or emailed images. It goes through a number of solutions that banks can actually implement, such as, for example, if original documents were presented to a nominated bank but they cannot be forwarded, it may be possible to agree that the nominated bank will advise the issuing bank that the documents have been presented, provide the issuing bank with scanned or PDF copies of the documents, and perhaps an authenticated SWIFT message stating that in due course the original documents will be forwarded. Many alternatives are suggested and put forward. Again, a very practical and important part in this guidance, section number 5. Moving on to section number 6 in this guidance. Section number 6, scenarios currently experienced in the delivery of documents. Now for me, this is the high point of this guidance paper and is really worth paying attention to. It goes through various scenarios, the most common one between the parties involved in trade finance instruments, and provides good suggestions and guidance for parties involved in international trade and finance. Well, my dear friends, that is about it. The guidance paper on the impact of COVID-19 on trade finance transactions issued subject to ICC rules. The guidance paper has a disclaimer. My presentation here for Trade Connect under ICC UAE also has a disclaimer, as it is not possible to actually cover everything. So thanking you from Trade Connect of ICC UAE. Please download the paper, please absorb, please assimilate, and please apply in your day-to-day international trade finance transactions.
ICC UAE makes it possible. Founded in 1919, our mission is to make business work for everyone, every day, everywhere. The International Chamber of Commerce, United Arab Emirates.